You guys, I'm torn, I'm perplexed, I am bamboozled because today I'm doing a build. It's the monthly build for September, but it's also a build that is going to be put in use here in the office. This is going to be an editing system for my editor Joe because he likes to edit things and he wants high-end hardware in order to be able to edit those things. But I'm also a little bit sad because this is probably going to be one of the last featured AM4 builds on the channel while AM4 is at the top of its game. For now, the CPU, the 5950X we're using, best CPU you can get on AM4. The RTX 3090 Ti is the peak GPU from NVIDIA's product stack still, but give us a few weeks and a lot of this is going to be changing as AMD launches AM5, and likely we're going to be seeing NVIDIA RTX 40 series GPUs launching soon too. So while this is a somewhat bittersweet build, I'm still excited to put it together. I've got my screwdriver, so let's get started.
Excellent!
Today's video is brought to you by the new FX series of cases and CPU coolers from Be Quiet, combining addressable RGB lighting with legendary build quality, top-tier performance, and near-silent operation. The Pure Base 500 FX can fit up to a 360mm all-in-one or tall air coolers while keeping things chilly thanks to airflow-optimized top and front panels. The Pure Loop 2 FX liquid cooler comes in 3 sizes and supports all modern mainstream CPUs, and the Pure Rock 2 FX air cooler can handle up to 150 watts TDP with style and ease. Be Quiet's FX series products are suitable for any build in need of a functional and tasteful RGB upgrade, so click the sponsor link in the video description for more. So here are the components that we're going to be building with today. I like this part when everything is arrayed on the table with the retail boxes looking all pretty and pristine and ready to be assembled. But the centerpiece of this system is going to be the Ryzen 9 5950X 16-core 32-thread CPU. It's been out for a couple years now, but it has really good performance both for gaming and it's got lots of cores and threads, so for video editing, transcoding, and the like, it is also quite suitable. The second major component powering this build is going to be our RTX 3090 Ti. As I sort of pitched in my monthly builds video at the beginning of this month, the RTX 3090 Ti's have come down in price quite a lot. And while I still wouldn't necessarily recommend a 3090 Ti if you have, I don't know, $1,200-ish to spend, I have one. So we're going to use it and we're going to make use of both the VRAM and the performance of this card. And it's a really cool looking and pretty one by Pellet, the GameRock OC, which has tons of bling here on the front of it. So we're going to be showing that off to you once it's installed and powered up. And in terms of component matching, I feel like there's really only one thing that matches perfectly with that card, and that is G.Skill's Trident Z Royal Memory Kits. I've got the silver finish ones here, which I think are a little bit more aesthetically pleasing than the gold finished ones, which are just a little bit too ostentatious for my taste. But the silver ones still have that sort of Breaking Bad special look on the outside of them. Looks a little bit like rock candy, or you know that blue stuff that they have in that popular TV series. And to tie everything together, we have the MSI MEG X570 Godlike motherboard. And this is actually a board that I've used a little bit, and I actually kind of broke the LCD panel that's right there, but functionally everything else works on the board, and it's a very good X570 board, so it seemed like a good fit for this build. And it will be teamed up with this power supply, the MSI MPG A1000G, which is an 80+ gold 1000 watt power supply, so plenty of juice for both our CPU and our RTX 3090 Ti. My astute viewers out there might have noticed that we have 2 coolers, and that's because I was torn. I wasn't sure what I should go with. We have the MSI MEG Core Liquid S360 here, which is a 360mm AIO all-in-one liquid CPU cooler. And that would actually fit in our case, the Fractal Focus 2, which is pretty new. It can fit a 360mm radiator in the front as an intake, but then I realized that I also have the Noctua NHD15 Chromax Black, which is a massive air cooler, tower-style air cooler, which is a very good performance and has AM4 compatibility, of course. And believe it or not, the height on this cooler, which is 165mm, is just 5mm shy of what seems to be the max height that this case can support, which says is up to 170. So we're going to be doing a proof of concept to make sure that that cooler actually fits in our case. But since this is something of a mission critical build that we're going to be using for regular editing and stuff, I just like to opt for air cooling if that's an option. And since I have this really nice one from Noctua, the NHD15, decided to go with that, but we do have the Core Liquid S360 as a backup. Rounding things out with some storage, I'm going to be adding more storage to this down the line, but for starters we have the Corsair MP600 Pro XT, which is a really fast PCIe Gen 4 drive, up to 7100 megabytes per second reads and 6800 megabytes per second writes. 2 terabytes is also plenty of storage to get us up and running, and I've also got a 2 terabyte SanDisk Ultra 3D SSD, so that's 2 more terabytes of storage for copying footage onto. Not going for a ton of RGB in this build, so we've got some really nice Silent Wings 3 fans from Be Quiet. Those are the 140mm versions. And that should allow us to pimp out this case, the Fractal Focus 2. I have high expectations for this case from Fractal because I've used the Focus G several times. The Focus 2 costs $70 or $80 depending on whether or not you go for one that has RGB fans. This one does have two 140mm RGB fans in the front, but it is actually a case that's a little bit more on the budget side. So I need to double check a few things like, will our motherboard fit in here? Since this is a larger than ATX motherboard, I believe it's eATX, and this case is only supposed to support ATX. So we might have a bit of a job ahead of ourselves to get everything fit in there, but I am optimistic that we can get it done. And I guess worst case scenario, I might need to hunt down a different X570 motherboard, but hopefully we don't need to do that. With all that said, there are the parts for the build. Let's get this put together and celebrate the end of AM4 because AM5 launches in just about a week and a half to 2 weeks. All right, so we've gotten a lot of our components unboxed and everything, and we're taking a first look at the case, the Focus 2, successor to the Focus G, and first impressions are pretty good for me. Again, this case is gonna cost you $70 to $80 MSRP, and that's a pretty nice price for a case that has nice ventilation across the front, includes a couple 140mm RGB fans, at least for the $80 version. Nice tempered glass side panel as indicated by our little warning label right there. But one of the first things I noticed was this truly is an ATX only case. There's one cable pass-through area right here that's vertical, and the mounts for ATX end right there. So if you were to put an eATX board in here, it might fit, but it's probably gonna pretty much block off all of your cable management gaps right there. Oh, there's my reflection, hi. So that meant we needed to go with an ATX motherboard and not an eATX motherboard like the X570 Godlike. Fortunately, I have the MSI MEG X570 Ace. Although this board has received a fair amount of use. It's still in great condition, although it is a little bit dusty. But this was my X570 testbed board for quite some time, and it actually came pre-installed with a Corsair MP500 SSD, as well as my Trident Z Neo benchmarking memory kit. I have a few of these kits so that I can use the same kit across different platforms for benchmarking. But it was easy enough to pop those off, and then I just had to take care of the dust. And for that, I was able to use my new DataVac Pro, which is actually a pretty high-powered vacuum that's meant for vacuuming stuff like this, which is why it has a nice long bristle brush, so you can use it right up against the board without fear of sucking off surface mount components or that sort of thing. So the board is now rehabilitated, looking nice and pretty, still has 3 M.2 slots on there for future expansion. I think I'm probably just going to leave this Corsair MP500 on there, so we will actually have a 3 SSD storage configuration right out of the gate. Although I think I might drop that down to a lower slot so I can use the dedicated Gen 4 slot here on the top with the Corsair drive, which has a pretty bulky heatsink on it by itself, which I assume is a nice high quality heatsink because that's what Corsair ships with it. Okay, let's get this thing assembled. All right, our motherboard setup is complete. We have our memory installed, we have our SSDs installed, we have the CPU installed, and we have our cooler installed. The main accommodation we had to make for this cooler is we're gonna have to go with a single fan for now. It of course ships with two 140s like this. However, in order to install this one on the back, it would have to sit on top of this I/O piece right here that goes above the I/O, which would make it stick out on top quite a decent amount. Likewise, if we had this in pull mode over here, it would have to sit on top of our memory. Not only would it block the glorious RGB and blinginess of our Trident Z Royal RGB memory, but it would also, again, make it stick up probably too far to fit in the case. So we'll go with one fan for now. I'll add an additional fan as an exhaust back there at the back, so that'll help it out a bit. And we should have lots of airflow in this system, so this should be just fine for our needs. Let's get this installed into the case. Okay, motherboard is installed, and I'm happy to say that I have done a little test fit of the side panel, and yes, there is clearance. So this NHD15 does fit inside this Fractal Focus 2 case, so that's nice. Just checking out the case a little bit more, and I'm liking it so far. You got nice mesh across the front, as I've already pointed out, and you can just yank on this front piece to pull it off if you needed to clean the filter or anything like that. It's not attached to anything else. Aha, I was having an issue getting it back on. There's some RGB cables back here, and one of them got stuck underneath the little peg, so watch out for that if you're reinstalling it. For cable management, you mostly have this gap going down right here, so you're gonna wanna be mindful of that. If you're trying to push through some thicker cables or something like that, you might have a little bit of difficulty, but there seems to be enough room for most of your needs right there. Typical front panel connectors over here, like HD audio, USB 3.0, and there is one SATA power connector to power up the RGB hub that's included. Do note that if you want to connect the USB 3.2 Gen 2 front panel connector, it's available as an additional accessory. For I/O up here, you've got power, a button to control the RGB LEDs, mic and headphone, a couple USB 3.0 ports, and then that Type-C that's blanked out right now. And that's just blanked out via this piece right here, so you just need to remove a couple screws to add on that accessory. I don't know how much extra that costs, but I think I'm gonna ask Fractal for one of those. Meanwhile, you don't have a huge amount of space back here, but again, it should be adequate for most needs. There are some additional mounting points here for 3.5-inch drives. There's a 2.5-inch drive mounts right here as well. And these are just little plastic tabs. I was concerned at first that you need to access the motherboard side in order to use these, but these actually just work by lining them up with the SSD and just pushing. And then it just sort of holds the SSD in place there. And that seems to work just fine, so I guess that's a reasonable solution. Here are the RGB cables that were blocking that front panel plug, but that's just because they're all tied up right there. For dust filtration, other than the front panel, you have a magnetic top filter that is included in the accessories, so that just sets over the top. For your power supply, you have one more plastic dust filter right there that's pretty easily removable from the back. And then your side panels are pretty rigid steel, at least thanks to the parts that they've rolled over and added some catch points here for mounting and unmounting. Captive thumb screws, which is a nice touch on a more budget-oriented case. If you'd like to shop captive thumb screw t-shirts, they're available at paulshardware.net. And then your main tempered glass panel here has some steel trim at the top and the bottom for where it actually interacts with the case. Some tabs at the bottom to slot that in, and then it pushes to the side and then secures with the captive thumb screws at the back. And a nice little aesthetic touch I feel like down here, this piece, which is actually part of the side panel, they folded in a little bit and put the Fractal logo, which gives sort of the impression that there is a power supply basement down here at the bottom without there actually being one. But that was a unique design element that I hadn't seen before, and as you can see, the NHD15 fits comfortably inside. And now comes the ugly part where we reveal the cable management. Look how lovely it is. Look how utilitarian, look how functional it is. I've used mostly twist ties so that they can be undone and redone and stuff like that. And let me tell you guys a little secret. And when it comes to cable management, you know, you can spend a bunch of time making it look all perfect and everything, but really, there's only one thing that actually matters. And that is, does the side panel go back on? And my trick has always been to lay the computer down this way so that gravity is your friend. Then you can just sort of set the side panel on top. Okay, make sure you put the lip in where the lip should go. And then, look at that. Best cable management ever. As you can see, it's totally clean, pristine, and looks great. Here is the other side of the build. Put the dust filter there on top, and everything fits. And I'd say that's the Biggest accomplishment of this case being, again, a budget case that's a little bit on the smaller side compared to some of the cases that cost $100, $250. But consider what we have installed here. 1000 watt power supply, RTX 3090 Ti, 5950X with 16 cores and 32 threads, and a full-featured motherboard with plenty of M.2 expansion capabilities there, and we have more mounting points for additional drives behind the motherboard tray if we so desire in the future. We also have a full complement of memory with all 4 DIMM slots populated, and while we don't have a cable management basement down here, most of the cables tuck behind this little panel right there. And while it does get a little tight in there and you have to kind of go at an angle, if you're able to work with that a little bit, you can get things pretty well tucked away. I do have this little excess loop of cables, and that's actually from the graphics card, which requires 3 PCI Express power connectors. But I was able to zip tie that together, and I'm gonna push it up here against the side of the case so that when our side panel goes on, the little lip there pretty much covers it up. Although I do want to get rid of that one cable that's sticking out there still. I fixed that little cable, but before we put the side panel on and give ourselves a peel, here comes the moment of truth. I think I flipped the switch the wrong way. Yes, I did.
Standard Paul.
It was already on. That's better. Look at that, we got RGBs, we got LEDs, we got RGB LEDs. And you know, it's tasteful. I feel like, again, we have once again achieved that tasteful level of RGB goodness without going overboard or over the top in the amount of RGB. Of course, we do have that special blinginess with the GameRock OC and the G.Skill Trident Z Royal Memory, which matches quite well if you look at them side by side, especially now that the LEDs are shining through them. But since the system does appear to be functional, we can go ahead with the traditional peeling of the plastic covering of the side panel. Of course, Fractal doesn't skimp. They give you plastic on the inside as well as the outside. Okay, now the Vardar's getting Vardery. Yeah, that's definitely the loudest fan right now. And guys, with that, we bid a fond farewell to the AM4 platform. And that's not to say that AM4 is completely end of life, or that we'll never do another AM4 build, or that anyone who's using AM4 sucks now or anything like that. We still have incredibly powerful hardware available on this platform. And I think it's awesome that AMD made the commitment back when they launched AM4 to maintain it as a stable platform through 2020. And they ended up even extending that through 2022. With AM5, they've made a similar commitment to extend it to 2025 at least, with the plus on the end, so we might be seeing more launches on AM5 even after that point. But we now have a bunch of setup to do with this system. For one, our rear exhaust fan here is plugged into our pump fan header, and I'm pretty sure it's running at 100%. It's definitely the loudest fan in the system right now. Everything else is pretty quiet as far as I can tell. But if you guys are interested, we'll be continuing to do some office setup videos here as we continue to get stuff set up, including Joe's workspace over there, where this is going to be sitting actually right next to the Fractal Focus G. So that should be interesting. So if you guys have any questions for us, or you want some follow-ups, leave those in the comments section down below. You can also find a link to my store down there at paulshardware.net, where you can find shirts, mugs, pint glasses, and all manner of high-quality merchandise to help support my channel and get some high-quality merchandise. Also, if you enjoyed this video and you want to hit the like button, go ahead and do that. Links to all the parts we used are down in the video's description. And of course, if you'd like to subscribe to my channel, that's always a good call too. Thanks again for watching, you guys, and we'll see you in the next video. Building Joe, an editing PC, the last AM4 build, yada yada. The monthly build for September is also what this is. Wait, what?
Not just your comments. Papa, why you giving Joe the editor your no-gen fucking computer? I'm just reading it.
Right now, this is one of the best computers you can buy, Joe. If I pointed that out, this is like literally the peak top tier hardware. It's available. Just complaining about editing PC. Welcome, everyone, to this build that I'm making for Joe that he obviously is completely ungrateful for. Don't use that, Joe. Don't use that intro. You can't. I don't know. You can. I don't care. Use whatever works. Whatever puts a smile on people's faces. All right.